Amid the standoff with the government, resignations submitted earlier by medical professors take legal effect from today, fueling patient concerns. The government's Special Committee on Medical Reform initiated a meeting today in which doctors' groups have refused to take part. South Korea's economy expanded by 1.3% in the first quarter of the year, posting the highest on-quarter increase in more than 2 years. This is raising the hopes of a rosier outlook this year. U.S. President Joe Biden signs into law a foreign aid package, with which military support to Ukraine begins within hours. Reports say Washington has already provided Kyiv with ATACMS missiles. It's April 25th, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We begin with the standoff between doctors and the government that has been continuing for a month. Professors of medicine say their resignations tendered a month ago take effect now. In the meantime, the government's Special Committee on Medical Reform initiated a meeting today in which doctors' groups have refused to take part. Choi Soo-hyung has the latest.
Medical professors from across the country leave their positions starting Thursday, although no significant movement has been reported so far. It's been a month since the professors started to submit their resignations nationwide. An emergency committee they formed announced that those who handed in their resignation letters will leave their hospitals as planned starting April 25th, regardless of the government's disapproval. The committee has insisted that Thursday marks the day when the resignations will take effect under civil law. The Medical School of Seoul National University, one of the so-called Big Five general teaching hospitals in the country, said departures will be carried out based on individual choice, but 4 leaders of its school's emergency council have confirmed they will be leaving the hospital on May 1st. The Emergency Council at the Med School of Ulsan University also announced that its medical professors' resignations will begin on Thursday, and those who are unable to resign immediately will halt medical services for 1 day per week from May 3rd. However, emergency and critical care services are not expected to be affected. Meanwhile, the Presidential Special Committee on Medical Reform held its first meeting on Thursday morning. The government-proposed social consultation meeting will focus on reducing regional medical disparities, revising medical laws, supporting costs at hospitals, and increasing medical personnel. The committee was intended to have around 27 members, including health ministry officials and representatives of doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and patients' groups. However, the Korean Medical Association, the largest doctors group, and the Korean Intern Resident Association have declared that they won't participate. The government had encouraged these medical groups to participate, but they refused to back down from their demand that the government completely withdraw its medical school expansion plan.
The Special Committee on Medical Reform will help make South Korea's healthcare system better by bringing people together to talk about changes. The government once again asked the KMA and the KIRA to participate.
He said discussions on the current medical dispute regarding the government's plan to expand the medical school enrollment quota by 2,000 from next year would be excluded. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Shifting gears, first quarter findings show Korea's economy has expanded by 1.3%, recording the highest on-quarter increase in more than 2 years. This is raising the hopes of a rosier outlook this year. Our An Song-jin reports.
The pace of South Korea's economic growth has been picking up on the back of strong private sector spending and is expected to continue throughout the second half of the year. That's according to South Korea's Chief of Staff for Policy, after the Bank of Korea on Thursday announced the country's economy had grown 1.3% in the first 3 months of this year compared to the previous quarter. This is the highest quarter-on-quarter increase since the fourth quarter of 2021, when the gross domestic product grew by 1.4%. Increased construction investment and a recovery in exports contributed to the growth. Civil engineering and building construction showed strong performances, while exports of IT products such as phones also propelled the increase. An official at the central bank explained the reasons behind the growth.
On top of improved consumer sentiment, the release of new smartphone models boosted private spending. However, growth in the construction sector may be temporary, coming from a base effect of low investment last quarter and more construction being wrapped up with the nicer weather.
Consumer spending grew by nearly 1% as expenditure on goods and services such as restaurants and accommodation rose. The economic growth seen in the first 3 months of this year is notable in that exports and domestic consumption show a relatively balanced portfolio, with private spending contributing 0.7%. The presidential chief of staff for policy underlines the importance of such growth.
It appears that we're returning to positive signs of growth, where the economy is led by private spending rather than government financing. If domestic consumption expands, the country's economic growth will continue, potentially exceeding this year's forecast of 2.2%.
On the production front, manufacturing went up by 1.2%, with an increase in chemical products and transportation equipment, while wholesale and retail services also saw increases. As data released on Thursday is a preliminary quarterly estimates, the final figures for the upcoming national accounts may be altered, with more recent external factors being added. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Leading car maker Hyundai Motor announced its highest first quarter revenue, backed by strong hybrid sales among others, despite a drop in sales volume. Leading chipmaker SK Hynix, in the meantime, has logged an earnings surprise. Shin Se-byuk has this report.
South Korea's largest car maker Hyundai Motor reported record-breaking revenue in the first quarter of 2024. According to its regulatory filing on Thursday, the company posted its record-high quarterly revenue of approximately 40 trillion won, or $29.5 billion. That's up 7.6% from a year earlier. Hyundai Motor explained the company maintained stable profitability thanks to continued sales growth driven by expanding demand in key overseas markets. The company's first quarter operating profit stood at $2.58 billion, marking a slight on-year decline of 2.3%, influenced by a decrease in sales volume. Globally, the company sold just over 1 million vehicles during the January to March period, down 1.5% on year. The car maker attributed the slight decline in operating profit to temporary shutdowns of the Asan plant production line in preparation for new vehicles being launched. Overall, the company's net profit was down 1.3% on year to $2.4 billion. Meanwhile, South Korean chipmaker SK Hynix shifted into the black in the first quarter of this year, thanks to growing global demand for premium memory chip products. The world's second-largest memory chip maker posted an operating profit of 2.8 trillion won, or a little over $2 billion for the period from January to March. It is the second-highest quarterly operating profit for the company, following a peak reported in the first quarter of 2018. It also represents a significant turnaround from the operating loss of $2.47 billion reported during the same period last year. SK Hynix credits its success to robust sales of its premium products for artificial intelligence, including high-bandwidth memory, as well as a profitable shift in its previously lagging NAND sector. The earnings exceeded market expectations, coming in nearly 40% higher than the market forecast of $1.4 billion estimated by Yonhap Infomax. As for net profit, it came to nearly $1.38 billion, a turnaround from a $1.87 billion loss recorded a year earlier. Sales soared 144.3% on year to $9 billion, marking a record first quarter high. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
The economic impact of heightened geopolitical tensions in the Middle East is being felt all around the world. In South Korea, the effects are being seen in the financial markets and oil prices. It's the topic of our business segment this week. Our economics correspondent Min Hee-jin joins me in the studio. Hi, Hee-jin.
Good evening, Jung-min.
Evening. Tell us to what extent the recent conflict between Iran and Israel has been affecting the economy at home.
Well, Jung-min, let's begin by talking about the currency exchange market. The South Korean won has been sharply depreciating against the greenback over the past 2 weeks, with the US dollar strong in markets around the world. Recent data has shown that the exchange rate between the two countries has risen by over 7% this year, and this rate exceeds that of the rate seen during the financial crisis of 2008. International oil prices, too, have seen a sharp hike. Last week, oil prices shot up. The global benchmark Brent crude oil surpassed $90 per barrel as Iran and Israel traded direct attacks against each other's territory for the first time. But oil prices have been fluctuating this week following Israel's limited retaliatory strikes, with traders dismissing the possibility of a sustained war between the two sides and the likelihood of the Strait of Hormuz being cut off. The country's benchmark KOSPI index also saw a sharp decline. Last Friday, it dipped below the 2,560 mark for the first time since February. This comes as foreign investors seek safe haven assets, but one expert says another big factor has been hawkish remarks from Federal Reserve officials.
For high-tech industries, the interest rate is very important for their investment plans. So with longer period of high interest rates, that they may scale back on their investment plans, and that's showing up in the stock prices of high-tech industries.
How are the authorities responding to these so far?
Well, the government has been fairly quick to respond to situations as they've been unfolding. And last week, Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok met with his counterparts from the US and Japan in Washington, D.C. and addressed concerns over the sharp devaluation of currencies against the dollar. And here's what he said.
Our three countries need to cooperate to actively respond to the financial instability that real economic uncertainty can cause.
The governor of the Bank of Korea also commented that the volatility should be minimal as long as the situation in the Middle East does not get any worse. And he wasn't wrong. Looking at the $1 exchange rate this week, it's been less unstable compared to immediately following the attacks last week. More concrete action has been taken regarding oil prices, with the government extending the fuel tax cut to June. It was due to expire at the end of this month. One expert says that this measure could help households manage their expenditures.
Given that the food price has soared a lot in the several months, I think it is certain that not abandoning the current policy will be helpful for households, since it lowers the transportation costs, which can directly improve the consumer's welfare.
Hye-yeon, what should the country begin to prepare going forward?
Well, the government and many research organizations are preparing for various scenarios that could unfold in order to get a better picture of how the conflict could develop and how it will affect the country's economy. So the main concern regarding a hike in oil prices is how it could get in the way of bringing the country's headline inflation down to the 2% range by the end of the year. The Federation of Korean Industries gave 4 different scenarios based on past case studies such as the 1973 oil crisis. If crude oil stays level at around $88 per barrel, consumer prices could rise to over 3% by the 4th quarter of this year. But should active conflict break out and crude oil prices rise to over 3 digits per barrel, consumer prices could rocket up by more than 4%, and experts say that a fuel tax cut won't be as effective. Here's what one expert says. Given that the core inflation rate excluding food and energy prices has been stable at around 2.5% this year.
So this figure is the lowest level since 2022, implying that the price level, excluding the energy products, has stabilized a lot during the last 2 years. So given that the price level has become already stabilized a lot compared to before, we can expect that the effect of the tax cut will be somewhat limited.
There is also a need for the government to consider how supply chains as a whole could be affected by conflict in the region. And this was diagnosed during a ministerial economic meeting earlier today. Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok described the supply chain as fragile as thin ice and highlighted the importance of a strong supply chain that many of the country's high-tech sectors are reliant on.
All right, thanks for the report, Hye-ryun.
Thank you for having me.
South Korea's ambassador to the United States, Cho Hyun-dong, says that the alliance between Seoul and Washington will remain strong, regardless of what happens in the U.S. presidential election in November. Speaking to reporters in Seoul on Thursday, he said he's met many officials from both the House and the Senate since taking office. And despite their political leanings, they've expressed expectation and hope when it comes to the future of the alliance. While adding that the outcome of the presidential election is entirely unpredictable at this point, the ambassador said variables such as swing states, moderate voters, and third-party candidates will likely shape the course of the upcoming election. In the U.S., a foreign aid package that provides crucial military aid is now law, with which military support to Ukraine begins within hours. Reports say Washington has already provided Kyiv with ATACMS missiles. Lee Seung-jae tells us more.
$95 billion. That's the amount of aid the U.S. is now providing in emergency foreign aid after approval from U.S. President Joe Biden. Of the $95 billion, $61 billion will go to Ukraine. After signing the bill, Biden said while the bill's path to his desk was difficult, but in the end, it did what America always does, rising to the moment to get things done. Biden also emphasized that the aid to Ukraine is not only for the security of Ukraine, but also for Europe and the U.S.
You know, this package is literally an investment, not only in Ukraine's security, but in Europe's security, in our own security.
The signing of the bill also allows for the U.S. to begin shipping equipment to Ukraine, including for air defense tech, artillery for rocket systems, as well as armored vehicles. However, according to ABC News, the United States already provided Ukraine with long-range ATACMS missiles last month, following orders from Biden. The missiles have already been used by Ukraine in their fight against Russia, including in Crimea last week and again in the port city of Berdyansk this week. ATACMS missiles can generally reach distances between 70 to 300 kilometers, enough to hit Russian territory. Biden's signing of the bill comes after the Democrat majority Senate approved a package that also includes $15 billion in military aid for Israel, $9 billion in humanitarian aid for Gaza and other war-torn regions, and $8 billion in security assistance to deter China's aggression in the Indo-Pacific. The bill was first requested by the Biden administration last fall, but was met with Republican-led opposition in the House before a sudden reversal by House Speaker Mike Johnson. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The Palestinian militant group Hamas has shared a new video of an Israeli-American hostage in a move that Israel has steadily denounced as psychological warfare. Our Choi Min-jung has details.
Hamas has released a new video showing an Israeli-American hostage. The person in captivity identified himself as 23-year-old Hirsch Goldberg-Polin. He was kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival during Hamas's attack on October 7th. In the video, the hostage says that he has been in captivity for 200 days, suggesting that the video was filmed on the 200th day of the war this week. However, the exact date of filming is yet to be verified. In the video, the hostage criticizes Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the government for failing to save the remaining hostages, as other Israeli hostages have done in Hamas hostage videos. He also says that Israel's airstrikes killed 70 captives in the Gaza Strip. After watching the video, the parents of Goldberg-Polin, who've been actively campaigning for the release of their son, told him to stay strong.
And Hirsch, if you can hear this, we heard your voice today for the first time in 201 days. And if you can hear us, I am telling you, we are telling you, we love you, stay strong, survive.
His parents also made a plea to the negotiating parties to get a deal done and end the suffering. Meanwhile, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan called for the immediate release of the hostage.
All I can say is this is an innocent young man being held hostage by a terrorist organization, and he should be released immediately without condition and without delay.
According to Reuters, Goldberg, Poland is among the 133 hostages still held in Gaza, after more than 100 were released last year. Israel has been launching assaults on Gaza in an attempt to rescue them. More than 34,000 Palestinians have been killed since the start of the conflict, according to Gaza's health ministry. The United Nations is particularly concerned about the number of children killed. The UN Commissioner for Human Rights says a child is being killed or wounded every 10 minutes. Choi Min-jang, Arirang News.
Over to K-pop. Conflict between parent company HYBE and the CEO of its subsidiary ADOR, which manages girl group NewJeans, is looking to become quite ugly amid accusations of a takeover and rampant plagiarism. Lee Yoon-hee tells us more.
South Korea's largest K-pop agency HYBE on Thursday said it will report the CEO of its subsidiary label ADOR, Min Hee-jin, to the police for breach of trust. In a press release on Thursday morning, HYBE said that specific evidence has been gathered to support its claims that Min had made moves to seize control of the label. This latest action is based on an interim report of an audit initiated on Monday. On Thursday afternoon, ADOR CEO Min Hee-jin held an emergency press conference to deny the allegations, saying that she had no intention of seizing control.
I don't think I betrayed HYBE, but I think HYBE betrayed me. HYBE used me as much as was possible.
Min said she feels like she's being framed and expressed her disappointment, asking how HYBE could take things this far. She also refuted the accusation that she had received coaching from a shaman to manage a label in the current situation. The conflict came to light on Monday when Min accused another HYBE subsidiary, Believed Lab, of plagiarism due to creative similarities between recently debuted girl group Islet and ADOR's girl group NewJeans. But HYBE says Min's attempt to take over ADOR was planned before Islet's debut, saying it detected attempts from Min and a close executive associate on October 22nd last year. HYBE revealed it has at least 3 digital documents to support its claims, including paperwork related to terms for contract changes and plans to attract external investors. The documents gave HYBE grounds to suspect Min was working on a plan to push HYBE to sell its 80% stake in ADOR or to take NewJeans to form a separate company. During the press conference, Min said her messages presented as evidence by HYBE were simply complaints, not a plan. As for what lies ahead for NewJeans, one expert said the group already has a well-established concept that would not be affected by Min's absence. Industry analysts have also said that the legal noise is expected to have minimal impact on NewJeans' activities, including the release of a new single next month. HYBE has also said that it will continue to look after the NewJeans members. Lee Yoon-hee, Arirang News.
Fresh air without fine dust and sunshine continued today. Perfect weather to go out for a walk. During the day, the temperature stayed at around 20 degrees Celsius in Seoul. The early summer-like heat also appeared in eastern parts of the country, with Gangneung and Daegu rising to 27 degrees. The days will get warmer and warmer from now on. Due to yellow dust, there is the possibility that fine dust concentrations will increase until tomorrow morning in Yeongdong and Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces. As the atmosphere stagnates in warm weather, ultrafine dust concentrations may increase at one point tomorrow morning in the capital areas such as Incheon and southern Gyeonggi-do province. Tomorrow, Seoul, Gwangju, and Daegu will start off at 13 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 26 in Seoul, Daejeon, and Gyeongju. It is expected to rain on Jeju Island tomorrow and Sunday and across the country on Monday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.